Howdy fellas, today I'm going to teach you how to build a fire in the snow in the woods with nothing more than a Bic lighter or some other sparking flame device and a pocket knife. You're probably thinking, oh, there's a lot to this. There really isn't. It's actually quite simple. You just have to know what it is you're doing. Believe it or not, we're actually surrounded by some really good fuel. That's one of the reasons I chose this spot. Step one's pretty straightforward. We're going to clear out some of this snow here. We're going to build our little fire right here. We'll get some snow cleared out and we'll elevate the fire to start with, get it out of the moisture. Now that we know where we're going to build our fire, we need to collect some tinder, collect some fuel. There's a bunch of different options here. We've got moss, we've got sap, we've got dry twigs. A lot of guys try to use leaves. I find that to be silly. What you really want is you want to find a tree that is either dead or dying and has some actually dry branches. Here, these are green. These are all green, young growth, right? But what we like about these is they have a pretty thick canopy up above, which means there's a better chance of finding some actually dry moss down here, kind of down low. You want to get away from the trunk of the tree a little bit, and out near on these branches, you've got moss, little bits of it. We've also got some pretty dry twigs that are up off the ground, but underneath the canopy of these small trees. I'm gonna break them into chunks about 6 inches long, just stick them in my pocket here, and we'll take those with us. We're still looking for our initial starter. I'm going to go with a moss route. I'm not a big leaf guy, don't really believe in leaves. I think they're fake news. We've got some bark here. It's pretty damp on the exterior, so we're going to go ahead and take our pocket knife and see if we can get some bark shavings that are not damp and covered in ice. Combination of bark and moss, that's the way to go. You can see here the way this tree is growing. It's going after the sun, so it's created a natural ledge. We're going to search down here, like we have been, for some dry moss and bark up underneath this little ledge here. We got some good dry stuff in there and some pitch even too. You might have to take a layer or two off, but up in there is going to be fairly dry. Obviously, you know, you got moss here. You might think, oh, that's pretty good, it'll burn. Oh, that's wetter than hell. Anything here on this side of the tree is going to be very damp. Pretty much useless to us, at least for the starting process. Here's a great example of undergrowth being our friend. Up in there, I guarantee there's some semi-dry twigs. A lot of coverage there. The ground is more or less dry in there. You want to go about a foot up, find some dead, dry twigs, snap them off, put them in your pocket, get them warm, dry them out a little bit more. Now, of course, as our fire matures and grows, we're going to want some larger fuels to keep feeding it. We don't want it to fizzle out and die. So we've got some semi-dry, bigger twigs, sticks underneath this foliage here. Like that one there pulled out of the ground. You don't want this lower half. Just nix it, get rid of it. This stuff is not going to be perfect. It's not perfectly dry, but I think we can get it to burn if we have a good little base. Alrighty, this is what we've got so far for fuel. We've got kind of a variety of things. Some dry twigs and a little bit of moss and some sticks. The moss is a little bit damper than I'd like, so we're actually going to set that to the side. We got our dry sticks. I like to always kind of break them up, expose the actual wood in there, so you're not just burning through damp bark. We've got some slightly larger sticks as well that we've been keeping in our pocket. These are good and dry. Once we've got a good little foundation fire started, these will take quite nicely. And of course, we have our primary tinder, which is our dry moss and bark. Go ahead and crumple that up. If you're going to work this and break down the fibers, making it easier to light, just make sure you do a lot of that over the top of your fire spot, because all those little fibers and all the dust from that will actually assist in the starting process. So now what I've done is I've taken those dry twigs and I've worked my bark and moss a little bit, crumpled it up, and I've kind of stuck it inside these little twigs. I'm going to set some slightly larger ones on top. The bark's a little damp, that bark comes off. Set it aside, you can put it here, it'll eventually burn. Try to find your driest and your smallest fuels. Stuff about this size, about 1/4 inch in diameter, is going to be about perfect. You don't want to overload your fire, but you don't want it to die out because it doesn't have enough fuel. Got our handy dandy Bic lighter. I'm going to come around the back side here and try to get the flame kind of underneath. Don't be afraid to hold a lighter on there for a bit. You got to remember, all this stuff's a little bit damp. It's been outside a lot longer than you probably. I generally like to light up a couple different spots. Gives you a better chance of ignition. Now your fire is in its infancy here. So don't overfuel it. Don't mess with it too much. Just help the flame get to where it needs to go. See right there, we're getting away from the dry. That's curling up and moving away. We want to ignite as much of this dry stuff as we can so that that flame grows and actually ignites the twigs and everything else. The little platform that your fire is on helps air get underneath it, draws the flame vertically, helps your fire grow and breathe better. Well, that's going. I'm not going to turn my back on it too much, but I'm going to grab some more twigs, try to feed it here. Just really liking these twigs. They're about the right size for fuel. Again, just take them, work them a little bit. Don't overfuel your fire. That'll choke it out and kill it right quick in a hurry. Take some of these twigs from earlier and put them on there. You'd be amazed how quickly a small twig like this that's got some dampness to it will dry out if you just sit it right on the edge of your fire. They'll dry out pretty dang quick if they're actually dead and dry on the inside. You're just trying to dry out the exterior to where they like to take a little better. You see that? We got a lot of good air coming in from underneath. It's drawing that flame vertical. That's a happy, healthy, tiny fire. Now, she's gonna run out of fuel pretty quick. We gotta keep working at our fuel. And this is where your prep comes in. The more you have prepped, the better. The less work and running around you need to do after you actually initiate the fire, the better. All right, this is what I would call a pretty happy little adolescent twig-sized fire. It's starting to get more resistant to moisture fuels, which is good, because at this point it'll eat pretty much whatever you feed it in the 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch diameter range. Even if it's a little bit wetter than you'd like, it'll gobble it right up. There's a lot of good heat coming off of it. We're using a combination of fir and cedar sticks. There's some dead stuff, dead lower branches we're utilizing. The key here is don't let this go out. This is a good spot to be, but you need to progress from here. You can leave it here. This would be a small, little cooking fire, maybe. But this smaller fuel is not gonna afford any kind of real coals, and it's gonna put off very limited heat. Keep feeding it, keep gathering. This pile here is virtually nothing. We're gonna need way more than that. These cedar branches are just great. Nice, good diameter, they're good and dry. They'll put off some BTUs, which will help dry out our slightly damp, bigger fuels. It's right what we want. Cedar, if you can find it, if you got it, cedar's a great fire starter. You can see here we're starting to add in some of our bigger, maybe not as dry fuels, but don't be fooled, you're not out of the woods yet. This fire has a lot more growing to do. You get coals in there, real coals, and you can burn just about anything. But you gotta build the coals first. That's where that bigger diameter fuel comes in. We'll take this, we'll bunch it up underneath this bigger kind of wet chunk here. That'll help dry that out. See, here we're humming okay. Is this a small campfire? Yes, it is. Is it anything else right now? No, we're not safe yet. We got some more work to do. A lot of gathering. You're gonna need fuel for this all night if you're gonna try to stay warm. When you're here, don't sit and stare at the fire. Don't get distracted. Warm your hands, warm your feet. Stay warm, stay safe, but go back out, get some more fuel. I promised you that we were gonna do this with nothing but a Bic lighter and a pocket canife, but I lied. Some brute force always helps. Found this rotten tree standing there, dry as can be. Birch, good fuel. Won't burn the longest, won't burn the hottest, but by golly, it'll sure make some flame. And truthfully, this rotten birch, once it gets going, when it's real punky like this, if it's dry, it'll burn pretty hot, but it will not burn very long at all. See, we're a little premature here on this bigger fuel. We need some more of the smaller stuff, get it ripping a little more. Don't be afraid to take fuel back off the fire if it's not ready for it. The last thing you want to do is choke your fire out and have to restart. You can usually tell when your fire's starting to get choked out. It'll be less flame and more smoke. That's a pretty good indicator that you're feeding it too much fuel too quickly. At this point, you've got a fire that you can start putting some bigger fuels on. You can get some of those bigger wet chunks, put them around your fire, start drying them out, start planning for the night. You're starting to get a little bit of coals here. Just make sure you're always stoking in the bottom, burning all your fuel, not wasting any. That dry stuff was hard to come by. You get this ripping, you can start looking at some wetter fuels, some bigger wetter fuels. You may have to come in here and adjust, get the air flowing properly, make sure it's actually burning, not just smoldering. And you get this humming at this stage, and you're not out of the woods, but you're probably going to be okay. You're probably going to be warm enough. It's not perfect, it's not ideal, but you keep building on it incrementally, going up in diameter. Always try to go with the driest fuel you can. But you get a fire this size, you keep stoking it, you keep feeding it, you get some of those coals built up, you can cheat a little bit and get some damper fuels for sure. I wish I could do this all the time, every day. But I'll settle for as often as I can.